The Indian Navy is moving ahead with plans to build 12 specialized warships designed specifically to identify and neutralize underwater mines. And these vessels, called mine countermeasure vessels or MCMVs, are not just any other addition to the naval fleet. They are essential for keeping India's ports, naval bases and commercial shipping routes safe from enemy sabotage. The Ministry of Defence is reportedly expected to put forth this rupees 44,000 crore proposal to the Defence Acquisition Council, chaired by India's Defence Minister Rajnath Singh. Once cleared, India will be on course to fill a critical void in naval preparedness, because there's great urgency at this point of time for this. Chinese submarines frequently patrol the Indian Ocean. These submarines have the capacity to silently deploy deadly underwater mines, and India currently has no dedicated vessel to counter such threats. Pakistan is also ramping up its capabilities, with 8 WION-class submarines from China expected to join its fleet. The Indian Navy had earlier operated 8 mine-sweeping ships, but all of them have been decommissioned now. With over 7,500 kilometers of coastline, 13 major ports and more than 200 smaller ones, India reportedly needs at least 24 MCMVs to ensure complete maritime mine safety. The plan is to build these ships dates back to 2005, but it was scrapped in 2017 and 2018. That's due to disagreements over cost, technology sharing and manufacturing strategy. Now, with increased threats, the Navy appears to be pushing forward again. Each new vessel will reportedly weigh around 1,000 tons and feature a non-magnetic hull, crucial to avoid triggering mines. They will carry advanced sonar, acoustic and magnetic sweeps to locate threats and will deploy remote-controlled underwater vehicles to detonate them safely. The Indian Navy played a major role in Operation Sindoor by deploying the INS Vikrant warships and various other submarines in the Arabian Sea to deter Pakistan. Right now, 60 warships and vessels are reportedly under construction in Indian shipyards, and the Navy has approvals in place for 31 more, including stealth submarines, next-generation frigates and corvettes, with future battles expected to encounter over water bodies. India is perhaps preparing for conflict in the maritime domain, and by putting MCMVs in active service, a major gap will be filled in its naval armor. In other news, weeks after India conducted precision military strikes on Pakistan's terror hubs in response to the Pahalgam terror attack, Pakistan cries talks again. Pakistan's Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif has reportedly extended India an olive branch. But going by past experiences, if broken promises at talks and dialogue had a face, there's few more diabolical than Islamabad. Let's break that down for you. During his visit to Iran, Pakistan's Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif said that he was ready to engage in peace talks with India. He even stressed on the importance of dialogue to resolve outstanding disputes, and he has touched on a couple that have troubled bilateral ties for decades. Number one, Kashmir, a major flashpoint between the neighbors. Number two, terrorism. Water sharing and trade were some of the others that the Pakistan Prime Minister listed out. Sharif's remarks came weeks after India and Pakistan agreed to military ceasefires. Speaking to media in Tehran, Sharif signaled Islamabad's willingness to pursue peace and diplomatic engagement with India, a distinct shift from the hostile tone taken earlier. However, there were no missing the rider. Listen to what the Pakistan Prime Minister said.
We are ready to talk for the sake of peace on water issue with a neighbor. We are ready to talk to promote trade and also counter-terrorism if they are serious. But if they choose to remain aggressor, then we shall defend our territory and our country like we have done.
Clearly, Sharif seems interested in settling scores with New Delhi, but with a condition, or rather, a subdued threat of sorts. Accept the offer for peace or be ready for war. India has responded firmly and in a discreet manner. Prime Minister Narendra Modi has made it extremely clear, crystal clear, that terror and talks cannot go hand in hand. Prime Minister Modi said any dialogue with Pakistan will be limited to the return of Pakistan-occupied Kashmir and the issue of terrorism only. Addressing an event in the Indian state of Gujarat, Prime Minister Modi said Pakistan had shown clear backing for terrorist elements during Operation Sindoor, with proof loud and clear.
मैं इसलिए कहता हूं अब ये प्रॉक्सी वॉर नहीं कह सकते इसको, क्योंकि जो आतंकवादियों के जनाजे निकले 6 मई के बाद जिनका कत्ल हुआ, उस जनाजे को स्टेट ऑनर दिया गया पाकिस्तान में। उनके कॉफिन पे पाकिस्तान के झंडे लगाए गए, उनकी सेना ने उनको सैल्यूट दी। ये सिद्ध करता है कि आतंकवादी गतिविधि प्रॉक्सी वॉर नहीं है, ये आपकी सोची समझी युद्ध की रणनीति है। आप वॉर ही कर रहे हैं तो उसका जवाब भी वैसे ही मिलेगा।
Similar proof was put forth from the Indian side as well, one that established the success of its retaliatory strike, Operation Sindoor. In a newly released video by India's Border Security Force, or BSF, Prime Minister Modi termed it decisive action and strong reflection of India's zero tolerance for any form of terror.
पाकिस्तान को आतंक की बीमारी से मुक्त करने के लिए पाकिस्तान के अवाम को आगे आना होगा, पाकिस्तान के नौजवानों को आगे आना होगा। सुख चैन की जिंदगी जियो, रोटी खाओ, वरना मेरी गोली तो है ही।
India and Pakistan have shared a troubled relationship since 1947. That's the year of partition. Since then, both India and Pakistan have fought multiple wars. But when it comes to Islamabad, old habits die hard, thus rendering past talks pretty much meaningless and leaving the prospect of peace rather elusive. In October 1947, the first war over Kashmir broke out and continued until 1948. When Kashmir was divided. Eventually, failed talks led to a second war in 1960s, which is also when India and Pakistan signed the Indus Waters Treaty. In 1963, talks were held once again over the disputed territory of Kashmir, mediated by the US and the UK. However, no agreement was reached even then. In 1965, the two countries fought the second war over Kashmir, one which ended inconclusively with a ceasefire. In 1971, the Indian Army's involvement in the Bangladesh Liberation War culminated in the Simla Agreement in 1972, where both sides agreed to settle any disputes by peaceful means. There have been many more rounds of talks after that, all with limited success, because they were thwarted each time by repeated acts of terror and cross-border violations by Pakistan. And not just that, the fact that the peace talks did not materialize is evident in the spate of terror attacks that ensued, such as the December 2001 attack on the Indian Parliament in New Delhi that killed 14 people. Then, in November 2008, armed gunmen opened fire on civilians at several sites in Mumbai, killing over 150. Even as trade relations began to improve across the LOC, and more recently, talks were also initiated in the aftermath of the 2016 Uri attacks and Pulwama attacks in 2019. But unfortunately, not to much avail. And finally, The Pahalgam terror attack on the 22nd of April this year, which capped all previous attacks for its mode of warfare. A dastardly attack on civilians and a clear message to India that Islamabad never did and perhaps never will roll back its terror machine. In Pakistan's northwest province of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, trouble is brewing again. The province, governed by Imran Khan's jailed party, is seeing demonstrations. Rival parties face off as well. In Peshawar, PPP demonstrators, part of Pakistan's ruling coalition, were tear-gassed outside the KP assembly on Monday. Police say they used force after demonstrators tried marching towards the chief minister's residence inside the red zone. The demonstration was a part of PPP's Save the Province campaign, targeting what they allege is massive corruption and governance failure under the PTI-led administration, and in retaliation, PPP workers reportedly torched a PTI demonstration camp that's near the Peshawar High Court. No one was hurt. The camp was empty at that time. Led by senior PPP figures, the rally reportedly saw women, students and party workers join in from across the province. The message? The PTI government has failed on every front, from unemployment to terrorism. But the story does not end there. As PPP fumes outside the assembly, behind bars, Imran Khan is calling for a fresh storm. On Monday, PTI officials announced that the party will launch a countrywide movement and urged party members and supporters to get ready. When will the so-called movement come? That's the question everybody's asking. That, however, is unclear. PTI party chief and former Prime Minister Imran Khan has been imprisoned at Rawalpindi's Adiala jail for over 2 years now, upon his conviction in 4 cases. And that since then, the party has announced several mass demonstrations demanding his release. The most notable one being the march to Islamabad that took place in November 2024, where after a say of pitched battles between security forces and PTI demonstrators, which ended in a hasty retreat of the party's top leadership and supporters from the red zone. Meanwhile, Imran Khan's sister, Alima Khanum, also spoke to the reporters outside the Adiala jail about the mass mobilization and said that Khan had issued instructions to get the party ready. With no date yet for PTI's planned countrywide movement and demonstrations already sparking fire in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, is a larger uprising looming in Pakistan? Well, that we'll have to wait and watch. Our next story is about China, Laos, Zambia, the Solomon Islands, Pakistan, some of the poorest, most vulnerable nations on earth. Once desperate for investment, they are now trapped under billions of dollars in debt to China, all thanks to China's ambitious Belt and Road Initiative. Now, all these countries signed on to BRI, which was sold to them as a lifeline for infrastructure and growth. But now, that lifeline is tightening its grip. In 2025 alone, just this year, these 75 countries owe a staggering $22 billion to China. Yes, that's the number. A new report from Australian think tank Lowy Institute calls it a tidal wave of debt repayments and interest costs owed to China. And a tidal wave it is. It's money that these countries simply don't have. The report says that the world's 75 poorest nations, many in Africa, Asia and Latin America, will together owe China $22 billion this year alone. But that's just part of the story. Total debt service follows to China from developing countries will reach $35 billion in 2025 and are set to stay high for the rest of the decade. That's a record, and it means that for the foreseeable future, China will be more debt collector than banker to the developing world. And already, repayment pressure is eroding their national budgets. These countries are cutting back on health, on education, and on climate mitigation in order to pay back China. So where did this mountain of debt come from? From the Belt and Road Initiative, or BRI. It is China's flagship infrastructure program launched in 2013 by the Chinese President Xi Jinping. And it promised, the BRI promised to build roads, ports, railways, schools and hospitals in developing countries. But those projects came with massive loans from China. And now the bills are due. China's lending spree has made it the largest supplier of bilateral loans, peaking at over $50 billion in 2016, more than all Western creditors combined. The BRI focused on countries that struggled to attract private or state-backed investment. But China's approach raised red flags as well, sparking accusations of debt trap diplomacy. It sparked concern that China perhaps was lending to vulnerable countries that have no means to pay the money back. Take Laos, for example. Another analysis by the Lowy Institute says that Laos is in a full-blown debt crisis, largely due to overinvestment in its domestic energy sector, financed primarily by China. China, of course, denies all these allegations and accusations of trapping countries in debt. But the facts tell a different story. The record high repayments due to Beijing could be used for political leverage. And that is a major concern because these repayments come at a time when the US has slashed foreign aid to many of them. And there's more. The report identifies new loans by China to Honduras, Nicaragua, the Solomon Islands, Burkina Faso, and the Dominican Republic. And what do all these countries have in common? They all switched diplomatic recognition from Taiwan to China. So yes, China has something to gain here. It continues to finance strategic allies, including its all-weather ally Pakistan, as well as Kazakhstan and Mongolia. It's also funding resource-rich countries like Argentina, Brazil, the Congo, and Indonesia. They are all key exporters of critical minerals and battery metals. But even for Beijing, this is not without consequences. China now faces a dilemma of its own making. On one hand, it faces diplomatic pressure to restructure unsustainable debt. And on the other, it faces domestic pressure to recall these loans. It's because China is struggling with its own economic downturn as well. And while China releases little public data on BRI, the Lowy Institute says its estimates bank on World Bank data likely understate the true scale of China's lending. For example, in 2021, aid data estimated that China was owed a hidden debt of about $385 billion. We can't independently confirm that number, but the pattern says it all. That is the real story behind China's Belt and Road juggernaut.